I want to take George in New York, a conversation with deniers. Hello, George. Thank you for waiting so long.
Okay.
We've been stacked up today.
Oh, I'm so glad you got me. And my proposal, or what I would like to say, is based on this whole session, especially 2 calls ago. So here's my question. As a critical thinker and an atheist, how should I and us, how should we treat and deal with people who deny facts and reality, not only some religious people, but Holocaust deniers, flat earthers, and people who may not be mentally ill, but are almost impossible to reason with, especially when they make outrageous claims? That's my question.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, George, it's hard. I think for me, and I'll let Forrest speak to this also, but for me, I try my best to determine right out of the gate, are they talking or arguing in good faith? Are they genuinely interested in a conversation? Or are they just wanting to assert their outrageous claims and they have no interest in hearing any other viewpoint? They have no, if I ask them questions about, if I use Socratic methods or street epistemology and ask them, why do you believe what you believe? What's your evidence for that? If I just, and they still don't want to engage in good faith and they don't want to truly have a conversation, because I'm willing to listen. And I approach every conversation with a willingness to listen. I'm not going to come in balls to the wall and say, I'm right, you're wrong, and here's why. I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. That will never get us anywhere. That will shut down a conversation every time. But if I'm coming in saying, you know what, I could be wrong on this position, and I'd like to hear your reason or your explanation for why I am and why you're right. So let's talk about this. If I don't feel like that person is engaging in good faith and is really willing to have a conversation and isn't coming to me with the same open-mindedness, then I am not going to waste my time, because it is a waste of time.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was going to like. It sounds weird. Like a lot of people would probably expect me to come in like with this whole teacher moment, like, oh, this is how you get. But I always say, if someone tells you that you are not going to change their mind, you need to believe them. And if somebody comes into the conversation not wanting to actually have a conversation and not wanting to actually, discuss, because for things like the age of the earth, Holocaust, evolution, pick poison, whatever it is, like we have overwhelming evidence. What we said, the vast preponderance of the evidence shows that this is such a thing. And if you're having to have an argument over what evidence exists, that's one thing. If you have to have an argument over whether evidence matters, that's a different thing entirely. You know what I mean? I remember one time I was having a conversation with a flat earther who was, I stand by, the nicest dude I've ever met. I have nothing against this guy, right? Super nice. But he was talking to me about how there's a dome over the earth and it's flat and we've never been outside and the stars aren't real and they're something else and all. And we got to this point where we went through evidence after evidence after evidence, where we finally got to just like the basic laws of physics. And his argument was that I have faith in these ideas of like the speed of light and gravity and things like that, and that I can't prove any of that, and light speed and gravity isn't real. And I said, well, no, because when you get a science degree, you do these things. I have proven the speed of light in a chemistry lab. I have proven gravity in a physics lab. I've done the experiments myself to show these things. I've done the calculations myself to show these things. This is not a faith-based position. And his response to that was, well, you can't prove to me that the laws of physics work the same way in that lab as they do right here. And at that point, the conversation ended for me. Because if I can't convince you, like if I drop my cell phone right here and you think that there's a possibility that dropping it right here, it just falls, but if I do it over there, it's going to explode into a pile of bagpipes because the laws of physics are different. Like we cannot continue here, right?
No, there's no conversation, right?
And sometimes when you have somebody who really is, a bad faith arguer who really is just going out of their way to be a nuisance and to try to poke holes and to come up with these same hokey, gotcha moment Ben Shapiro type arguments where like it's not about thinking, it's about trying to snatch somebody and catch them in a little thing. When you have that, occasionally it's more beneficial to make an example of that person for other people to learn from, which is a lot of what we do on this show. I'm not going to convince this one person. There's no way that I can possibly bring them closer to me. So I'm just going to go ahead and drive them further away. And in doing so, everybody else watching is going to learn something, and they will be more convinced of reason. You know what I mean? Like, that's something you have to do sometimes.
That makes sense. But when you're dealing with a lot of religious people, it can be very, very frustrating.
Yep.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I won't argue. It's terribly frustrating because you want to engage people in good faith and you want to have honest conversations about things that matter, but sometimes you just can't. And what I've learned is that there are people who you can have good faith conversations with, and I have limited resources. I have limited energy, limited time, limited mental capacity, and I can't waste it on people who are going to suck the life out of me. We call them trolls.
Okay.
And there's a reason we don't feed the trolls, because you're not getting anywhere.
Well, 2 calls ago, you had a perfect example, because this guy was, in my mind, wacky.
Which one was that? Was that the guy who was talking about the flood?
2 calls. Yeah.
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 No, there was no getting through to him. He'd made his mind up about what was real and what wasn't, and so those people, he'll go away thinking, oh, he showed us, and
they had to hang up on me because I was making such good points. They couldn't take it anymore.
They couldn't take the truth, so they hung up on me. That's where he'll go with that, and
for sure.
So you can't do anything with people like that. You really can't.
No, absolutely
so
not. You're right.
I would encourage you not to
Thank you.
get too frustrated, and try to find the ones you can have good conversations with.
Yeah.
But thanks for the call, George. Appreciate it,
I
man.
forgot who it was that said it, but I think,
guys.
yeah, I forgot who it was that said it. They're like, yeah, the best thing that I learned is I don't have to agree to every argument that I'm offered or something like that. It's like, you just, you don't have the time. If you have neither the time, the patience, nor the crayons to explain it to them, you need to be able to walk away from that conversation.
The crayons.